Okay, so let's get started. I want to talk about a 14-day challenge piece today, the day one of the 14-day challenge. I'll talk about what the 14-day challenge is, why it's so beneficial, why is everybody doing it, and how long it's been around. And I wanted to do a quick little critique on this one. Something there is working and then something is not. And I want to know exactly what it is. Sometimes I don't know what it is. Sometimes I just experiment with different things and see what pops out at me and then I just know what it is. And I don't always know what's wrong with it. Sometimes it's just like an archaeological exploration for me. Um, One second, my fire alarm has no battery. Shh. Hey. Um, and Yeah, so sometimes for me, it's just digging and seeing what I can figure out. So let's start with the 14-day challenge. What is the 14-day challenge? Well, I started the 14-day challenge in 2012, long time ago. And it was just a way for me to teach one particular student how to believe in the process of repetition, how to believe in the power of repetition, how if you revisit the same subject and give it all you got and then get a critique and go back to that same subject 14 times, you realize that really the difference between you and the advanced version of you is just practice. It's just repetition. So that's the 14-day challenge, doing a portrait 14 times in a row. It could be 14 days in a row. You could do it in 14 days. You will see improvement. You do it over 14 months. You will still see improvement. You do it over 6 months, 3 months. You do 6 day challenge instead of a 14-day challenge. It should be called the 14 portrait challenge. But it started off as a daily challenge. Students used to book with me and I'd see them daily for their 14-day challenge critique. So it was an amazing challenge, started off, and it's kind of evolved because people's lives obviously can't accommodate 14 days of hard struggle for one subject. But those who have done it have just been so happy with the results. There's a lot of videos on my channel of previous critiques, previous 14-day challengers who've graduated it, people who have critiqued each other on the community. So if you want to submit your 14-day challenge, you want to attempt it, it's a free challenge. A lot of the stuff you see here in front of you in my YouTube, on my Instagram, and my Reels, it's all free. This is a free community through and through. The only things that are not free, obviously, are my products, which is my software and my paid tutorials on Gumroad. But everything is free. The community on Reddit, on subreddit, is free. The Discord is free. The watching the videos on YouTube is free. It's non-subscription. So literally everything is free. I used to charge $1, $1, $1 human to watch the full, but that's back when I used to start posting short ones to get YouTube on my side, which was a failed attempt. But that's it. That's the 14-day challenge. So I'm going to critique this piece really quickly. The first thing I'm going to do is separate the object from the background. You have a good background value. Everything looks good, but something about it doesn't look right. And that's how, not desaturated, it's how desaturated it looks even while it's grayscale. So you know that kind of chalky look, that milky look, that kind of feels like they're in front of a mist or something. So how does that happen? That happens because you have not identified the cavities on the face and the values associated with them. So what does that mean? What are the deepest holes of the face? And how do we show that these are holes? How do we show that they're not like other things? Well, the face has many different types of altitudes on it, many different altitudes. So imagine a flat surface. If the face was just flat, a solid flat, not even a circle, it would just have one value. But the face is not flat. The face has many grooves. So this would be the chart for the flat face. You go up a certain level and then that's it. It stays the same value all the way around. That's a flat object. A flat object has one value per plane, just like any old polygon that you have. Each of these surfaces has just one value per one flat plane, one flat plane, okay? But the face is not one flat plane, but we can argue it's many flat planes, meaning that we have all of these different flat planes. Like we can argue that one, have you ever seen somebody do contouring makeup? Well, they just do one big value over here, another value right here. And those are all the major planes that they're working on to try to create a feeling of a contoured face or to change the bone structure in their face temporarily by using makeup. So that's exactly the same thing. This is where the two worlds overlap. So this is blocking when you're blocking a specific surface. But if you spend so much time blocking, you start just seeing only the simple surfaces. And a face is not just a bunch of, flat surfaces. It's surfaces within surfaces within surfaces. So here we've got an infinite amount of polygons to render this entire face. So what you're missing is the next step. You've got great bedrock. You've got a great foundation. But what's happening is the actual cavities on the face are not represented in any way. So again, let's go back to the chart. If a flat face with no values has one flat line, the human face goes a little something like this. So you've got, and I'm literally just drawing the face plane on the chart. I'm just drawing a side view image. Do you see what I'm saying? So if this is the X, this is the Y, and these are the values, and this is the downward motion as the camera moves, or however you want to work with this graph. I don't know. I guess it's placement and value. This is how it works. And this would be the brightness, and this would be the distance from the light. Distance from the light. So this is it. This is the answer. But unfortunately, it's hard to show those depressions that happen that really show them. This depression right here, to actually show the value drop, it would look pretty weird. So this doesn't just stay as a simple profile sketch. The value drop that happens when we hit those dark values is extreme. We go down into almost full black, where this is the brightness slider, white is here and black is here. We have some extreme drops. So the chart ends up looking something like this. Okay, all the midtones are really nice. They're great. They're so harmonious. But when it comes to the dark spots of the face, meaning the black of the pupils and the iris, it's a full black. We drop. The graph goes all the way down. The mouth cavity goes all the way down. The nostrils go all the way down. Obviously, this graph isn't complete sense, but this serving the purpose here. You see what I'm saying? So the midtones all look great. Really, really great midtones. But unfortunately, that doesn't mean that you can skip all of those extra steps that go into completing the realism. The realism needs contrast. It's not something you can skip. And if you do, there's always going to be something missing. So let's say that this is where we started off. How do we take it to a fully rendered level? The next natural step is applying the darkest darks, that value drop that happens in all of the cavities of the face. Complete and total value drop. Pure black. Okay, and so because you have no gradual value happening in all these areas, we have to not just do the black value drop, we have to do the surrounding gradual values that are almost black. So the shadows of every septum, every nostril, the shadow of the septum. I can't tell where the light is coming from. I think it's coming from the side. If you are doing a 14-day challenge, make sure the light is top down. So we would have a shadow for the nose. Okay, and so we've got a shadow here for the nose as well. After you've set the goal, this is the goal. Pure black is the goal. We're not using any more black anywhere of this level around the face. That's it. That's it. That's your limit. You can't use any more black anywhere else. Everything else is a fraction, is a little bit of black. So then I guess the next step would be, just like I said, the shadows of everything. So the lash line, Things can be black because they're a hole, like they're just a full-on hole, a cavity, a canyon in the face, like the nostrils and the mouth, or because they are pigmented. It's an actual color sitting on top of the surface, or the pupils of the iris, pupils in the iris, or the hair itself can be pretty black. That can be an extreme value drop. Both are considered pigment. So that's the kind of what I'm looking for next. Pigment or a secondary shadow, meaning a cast shadow. So the pure blacks are a cavity. Remember that a cavity, a cave in the mountain, is not a shadow yet. It's just a cave. It is a shadow, but it's not a cast shadow. It's just all shadow, and to the point where it just rejects all light. It is nothing but shadow. You are in the shadow. You're not sharing some it's not a contour shadow. It's not a cast shadow. A cave in the face is like full on rejection of the light. There's no light in there. So that's why you use pure black. That's why you reach for the black in your palette. That's the time where you just say, I gotta not be afraid. I gotta go in and reach for the black, because that's what's going to create that complete spectrum of realism in my values and my drawings. All right, so this is how I'm doing it. I usually work light to dark, but this time I'm working dark to light just to show you how extreme you need to go sometimes to make it work. And that's what's missing in this 14-day challenge. So again, the next thing is the secondary shadows, which are either cast shadows, contour shadows, or pigment shadows. So everything I'm doing is a combination of that. They are different from a cavity shadow. A cavity shadow is a very, very intense kind of shape that is rejecting the light. Its nature would never have light in it based off the current setup. So what I'm doing right now is just that. I am casting a shadow over here off the lash line. And I'm giving the eyebrows just a bit more pigment. I'm not trying to change the face you drew too much, but I want something in between. If realism has to change the face a little bit, I'll do a little bit. Okay, so I'm just giving them just a bit of dark value just so I can show you what pigment in the eyebrow looks like. Okay, so just this alone has done a lot. Let's take a look. And you can stop here. If this is your style, this is publishable. This can be used in media. This can be used anywhere you want. So just with the contrast, before, after, feels complete, right? That's good contrast. Let's recap on the ways to detail. There are many ways to detail, and these are the reliable ways to detail. Theoretically, these are the only ways to detail. Everything else stems out of these systems. So the classic one is shrinking your brush. Okay, you guys have seen this one before. Shrinking your brush, that's one way to detail. The next way to detail is to sharpen edges. I hate my writing. It's faster than I think, or I think faster than I write, so I'm trying to catch up. Okay, sharpen edges. The next one is going to be contrast. And the last one is saturation. So you have sharpened some edges, you've shrunken your brush, but you had no contrast. You can skip one way in your work, but contrast is one of those ways that if you skip it, it becomes instantly stylized, meaning that it becomes abstract. If you skip all of the contrast in your work, it becomes a very symbolic art. Do you know what I mean? But if you choose not to sharpen edges, it can still look realistic if you choose not to have super sharp high-res edges. If you don't shrink your brush and you use very large brush strokes, it can still look realistic. Contrast is one of those things that you need a minimum amount for you to still have realism, without which you're going to risk looking abstract. And I think that's what made the before look abstract, kind of like symbolic, kind of a little bit on the softer side stylistically, leaning more on style than realism. So I'm not trying to throw too much realism at your style, but the 14-day challenge is about finding a harmony between your current style and realism. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to lock the layer and then just keep looking for those secondary shadows, contour shadows, cast shadows, and pigment shadows. All right, so the pigment of the eye is just here. And I'm using pure black. All I'm adjusting is the opacity and my brush hardness while I'm pressing the brush. Again, this art is beautiful. The face is so well done. All I want to do is help you explore where to take it from here. What's the next step if there was one? What would it be? All right, so I'm adding a bit of that contour shadow around the eye socket. I'm adding that triangular shadow on the lower part of the nose if the light was top down. Do not do non-top down light for your 14-day challenge. It's about building a reliable light situation that you can use anywhere. Someone hires you for a character design, someone hires you for a book cover, someone hires you for a portrait or stickers or something. You're gonna know exactly what light source to use that's just generally applicable. And if you study top-down light, it prepares you, because you're thinking so much about surface contour, it prepares you for side view light, lower angle light, all of those things. Have a reference back to top-down light. Just like when you paint strictly females, and then you're trying to theoretically think of what does a female face do to look female. The male face is almost always theoretically an opposite, and so by knowing female, you know male just by the negatives. And I'm just casting the shadow here. And so cast shadow, contour shadow, pigment shadow, cast shadow. You see all these? They're very different from the nostril, which you can say is a cast shadow, but not necessarily. Nothing is being cast. It's already in a shadow zone. It's a cavity shadow. And now I'm just going to blend this nose shadow, so it has a gradual value, a gradual movement up into the nose. I'm going to blend this here, and I'm going to blend this whole line. I'm just using my smudge brush to blend that line. It's gone, the edge is gone, but it's still there. We don't see the edge clearly, but its presence is still there to help create that three-dimensional look. Okay, and then once again, now I'm just blocking those planes that I mentioned earlier, those contouring planes. Contrast isn't just about the black, it's about the white side of contrast. And I'm just throwing some of that white on all those areas that are getting light. So the top of the nose, the bridge of the nose. A forgotten contour shadow block is this one in between the eyebrows. You can make it as big as this. Look at that. You can make it as big as this because this is from the side view of the face. This would be the forehead and the nose going up. So we would see that downward tilt in the forehead before the nose starts. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to find all those highlight bands on the upper nose. The upper lip, the shadow of the lower lip. And again, just like the shadow that I just blocked in, I'm going to go on darken, lower the opacity, and I'm going to just extend a large shadow running across the entire upper lip. Okay, because it looks like you've sketched this drawing on a paper. It's still line dependent. This is a line dependent sketch because almost all of the values that you used were singular to the feature that they represented. There was no cast shadow, there was no sculpting, there was no volume, there were no shapes, there's barely any contouring. So this is a line-dependent drawing. Even the lines of the original sketch are still visible. The natural next step is to bring in all of these shapes that have volume in them. So the cylinder of the mouth, we just located it. And then there's the upper half of the cylinder of the lower lip. All of these blocks that are just ugly to you right now will be addressed. They'll be ironed out and blended out. And then for the forehead, you can do radial shading with a blocking brush. That's something you can do. And I just do that radial shading just like that. Okay, there's the half shadow, meaning half of the eyeball has a shadow right here. That makes the eyeball look very three-dimensional, and it makes it so that it's much easier to show where that waterline is. And then a couple more blocks here and there to sharpen the resolution, meaning remember those 4 steps of how to render, or how to add detail. Adding sharpness helps you make a more finished drawing. So see this fuzzy edge? This is exactly how you do it. You find fuzzy edges and you make them non-fuzzy. That's it. You sharpen edges. That's increasing resolution. That's all it means. And that's one way to detail. That's one way to bring in the look of completion. The nose almost always has a bit more shadow than anything else on the face. Sometimes oils what does that sound wrong to me? Sometimes oils, yeah, like to hang out on the face in certain areas where there is like a divot in the face. So right here on either side of the nose. And then some oil hangs out here. And then we have the highlights of the inner eye, a little bit of a highlight on the inner corner of the eye. Sometimes that catches a bit of light. I'm bringing in that pure white highlight of the pupil in the iris, so that's pointless now because it's probably going to get blended away when I start detailing. Okay, so all of these blocks are going to make it pop. That's the difference between a sketch. Okay, that's the difference between a sketch of a sphere and a fully rendered sphere, is identifying where those values are. So right here we've got like pure gray that's flat. Remember the flat plane, the flat graph? And then by adding more and more of these little blends, we start getting a sphere that just pops. So while I'm blending, I'm finding all these curved edges that were once represented by that basic blocking shape, which I guess can be represented with a diamond. Okay, so we've got the same shape, but now we have this diamond quality to it. It's just like a low res version of the sphere. Lock that layer too. And let me just give that a quick render so the diagram is a little bit easier to understand. Okay, and then the same thing here. Okay, so this diamond right here is the precursor to this sphere. So it goes like, I should probably put it in order. Oh, okay, there. Thank you, Lassa, that was wonderful. So I'm just going to do that. And then that. Okay, so that's the order of what we're doing right now. We're finding all of the things that were once a block connection, meaning this, and this, are in the diamond section right now. And everything that's going to get blended right now, they're going to be rounded off. Not everything gets blended in the same level though, okay? Don't go in there with your brush wielding this magic wand of smudge and just blending everything willy-nilly. Blend zoomed out so that you can see if you even need to blend any more than 0.5 seconds of blending. Almost always you guys will hover render. It's just a given. We just think a lot more than we need to when we're learning something new, whereas the pro just feels their way through it. Do you see what I mean? So overthinking can lead to hover rendering. 0.5 seconds for each area. Literally, I don't even last that long in each area with the smudge brush. And I'm just blending all the negative space of the face. I've talked about this before, meaning all of the fleshy parts of the face. Nothing that you can say is a feature by definition. It's just like the skin or the forehead or the cheeks or just face, you know, not yet a feature. Unfortunately, by blending this demonstration, by demonstrating this blending, I'm getting rid of your brush strokes, which are so cute and charming. I don't want to get rid of them, but just to show the difference in rendering. Okay, so I'm blending above the crease line. I'm not blending away the crease line. I need to leave that alone. That's a valid edge that happens on the face that needs to stay sharp. I'm going to leave some of the hair texture you have because it looks great. So this is what was missing. It wasn't so much your skill wasn't there because the face you drew was wonderful. What was missing is the next step in the knowledge. And that is everything I mentioned, from contrast to the ways to detail, to the blocking, to the extra bits of anatomy, to the shape, to the geometric anatomy, all of that. And so now my brush has, instinctively, I shrink my brush when I go near a feature. Because you have to mentally think of the smudge brush the way you think of an eraser. A smudge brush can be an eraser if used wrong. So you think about it like you think of an eraser. Very, very delicate use. And I'm just smudging the edges. Okay. So I didn't want to do just one quick demo of adding contrast. I wanted to take it all the way to completion so that you guys can see this. Isn't that difficult to teach yourself how to render on that commissions level rendering, on the freelance level rendering? ArtStation level rendering is not that difficult. I grab the temple value and wrap it around the forehead as it connects back to the upper corner of the crease. That helps close off the eyebrow area a little bit. I'm going to just throw in a couple brush strokes just to make the eyebrow hair texture feel a little bit more clean. And I keep cleaning up this area here. I throw in a highlighter just there. I'm kind of all over the place. And then I blend out some of this texture you have in the crease, and I blend out the inside of the crease just there. That's because a lot of fat and fluid is stored there. That crease line is softened naturally. Let me just desaturate from the noise. Okay, so just over here, I'm blending that out. We don't need this crease. What we do need is this crease, this big one here. This makes all the difference. This really makes the face feel real. And this is that next step in the contrast. This isn't something you can kind of explore fully right away in the painting process. This is done in the finishing stages. Brushstroke number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Sometimes I erase with a hard round, enlarge to match the crease, and sometimes I erase with a blocking brush. It just depends on if I need to do the work quickly or not. Okay, so we have a very sharp crease line, and then I delete away from the top. I don't want it to look like eyeshadow makeup. I just want it to look like a natural crease. And so I delete away at it, and it's just present right there. And I'm just gonna quickly do the other side, just cleaning that crease. Sometimes it's the inverse. Sometimes the bounce light up here is so strong that the eyebrow, that the crease is on the eyeball. So let me show you on the other side. Sometimes we don't have light at the top. Actually, I'll just leave it alone. Sometimes we don't have light at the top, on top of the eyelid. Sometimes it's from a different inverse. And then again, brushstroke number 1, number 2, number 3, and then I just get my hard round and delete away at it, just like that, and then clean up. So if you want your 14-day challenge to be a complete and total exploration of your skill, push your contrast, push your rendering. Even if you don't plan on leaving this unfinished style that you have, at least introduce some contrast to it. At least borrow some of the realism and leave behind the rest so that you can keep that unfinished charm, that storybook charm to your style. Okay. And I'm just blending here, and I'm just cleaning right here and here. But this is one of the cutest faces I've ever seen for the 14-day challenge. It's so cute. I love the expression. Also has like a dark look to it, because of that kind of lack of focus. It has a very dark overhanging element, like a doll face. I'm throwing shadow on the outside corner, just over here. Again, these are makeup elements. In order to get our faces to look like this, we'd have to use makeup. But in our drawings, our characters are not wearing makeup, they're drawings. Do you see the difference? So sometimes people think no makeup looks a certain way, but really no makeup just looks like what we draw if we were trying to draw a vampire. It's hard to explain it. You have to work in makeup to kind of know what I mean. And I'm just throwing in the lower eyelid. Not too much. I don't want it to read as a shadow or an extra shadow or an eye bag. And I'm throwing a little bit of a shadow line there. And then now, to get rid of that hairy look in the finish, I just go full 100%, shrink my brush, and try to create a clear-cut presence of the waterline. Don't let the waterline look hairy, because it just throws off something about the resolution. The eye is the 100% point of rendering on the face. The eye is the focal point. Write that back to me. It's always going to be the point where people look at, because that's how we interact with other humans. We look at the eyes. It's natural when a human sees a portrait, they want to look right at the eyes. And so we draw as if we're seeing things with the naked eye, meaning we draw things one at a time, as if we're seeing one thing at a time. The eyes and the mouth can't have the same level of rendering, or else it's just going to look like it's an overwhelming amount of detail. You don't want to add every single little wrinkle to the lips. It's just going to make the character look very dried out or desiccated, or if that's the word. And I'm just blending away. Again, the blending is very careful. I'm trying to preserve the edges. I'm not trying to overblend, but I also want it to look complete. Blending and soft transitions that are non-hairy end up adding resolution. Softer values end up making that finished look appear. Okay, and if some of you are confused with how to wrap out or wrap up. If some of you are confused on how to wrap up the lower eye, because sometimes y'all just keep rendering until the sun sets, you just grab that cheekbone highlight and drag it down. Don't add more shadow, because then you're just drawing a different picture now. Grab a highlight and make the edge appear. That won't darken the face any more than it already is, but it will give you a nice sharp edge to the corner of the eye. I will add just a little bit of shadow though. Just not really a shadow, it's more of a mid-tone, just to clean up this area. So now I just want to find out exactly where that block is of the eye and clean it up. You see how most of my attention now is on the eyes, because they're the carrier of the portrait. That's going to be where your skill is poured, because that's your focal point. In your portraits, in your illustrations, anywhere you go, your skill is poured into the focal point. All right, and then just to continue your style, I'm going to blend a little bit for that lower part of the iris. Okay, and then I'm just going to catch up the lips with the rest of the contrast. So it's the same as what we did with the crease. New layer, low opacity, full black, brushstroke number 1, number 2. I'm hugging the edge because I'm creating that recession look to the corner, the edge of the lip, to that upper lip, as if it's receding into that shadow. Do you guys see that difference? It's pure magic. Before, after, before, after. Minimal work, but you get three-dimensional pop right away. And the same thing happens for the lower lip as well. And then we've got another type of shadow, which is the contour shadow. So I'm just going to recede the upper lip a bit on the corners, add a bit of that shadow on the outer edges of the lips, the corners of the lips, and recede a little bit of shadow just above the chin. And make sure that that chin block is nice and sharp. There is also a shadow under the lower lip. It just depends on how strong you want the chin to look and how deep you want that little shadow to be. Don't pour too much attention. If you're trying to draw a younger character, don't give them jowls. Don't give them too much. And you see this block, this half block on the chin? You do that, and then you blend it out, and then you'll get a three-dimensional chin. So you don't want to over-render it, but you still want to show facial structure. Okay? If you want to continue adding more volume, all you got to do is now show that the sphere is still the foundation. It just depends on how much contrast you really want to use in the end. But I'm going to go full force because I just want to show you guys everything. And so I'm going to go full black, soft brush. You can do this in any other way. I'm just doing it like this because that's just a quick way for me to show it. You can block your way into it. You can use whatever brush you want. You can keep it the same layer. You can do a different layer. It's your choice. So brush stroke number 1, I shrink my brush. Brush stroke number 2, my aim is the chin edge. Okay, and then right above that, I delete all of that. Everything I put in above that chin edge gets deleted. This is that cast shadow, and you have this cast shadow missing everywhere there's an opportunity to have it. This means you need to stop and do some form studies. Okay, so now we're left with this, and then we get the soft brush just like we did with the eye socket. We delete a little bit at the sides of the cylinder of the neck, and we're left with like a middle shadow just there. And you can reduce its intensity. We just need it to show that this neck sticks out and blocks some light. Do you see that? Before, it was like the neck was the head. This is what happens when you miss contrast. You miss anatomy. Like, you need the chin to be far away from the neck and block the light, right? That's anatomy. So when you're missing contrast, that's what the eye of the viewer notices. You know, this is a little bit soft. That's the word of a non-artist. That's the word that they'll say. Oh, it looks a bit soft. Your art is very soft. If that's not something you like, you got to change that. If that's something you like, there's still ways to learn all this so that you're doing it deliberately. You're not accidentally having this soft look in your work. A little bit of shadow on the ear holes, not too much, and then just some general shadows to drop the values of the ears ever so slightly right under the wing of the ear, so like that top section of the ear, so that we still keep the top of the ear kind of catching some light. And then of course I'm going to get rid of all of your lines, which is something I usually do at the start. Oops. Something I usually do at the start. But I'm just going to do it now. So you see, I didn't have to make it so much more contrasted than yours. We still have a general milky look to things, but it's not so much that it's abstract. That's why I didn't add a beard shadow. I didn't want to take away from that milky look, or, you know, from wherever you were going with it. And then I'm going to get rid of this line. You don't need the line. That's the beauty of the 14-day challenge. You learn exactly what you need. What really is the critical thing to know if you want to draw a face. And it's the 6 dark spots. It's the dark planes and the light planes. It's how to detail. It's the shadow types. It's the contour types. It's the geometric anatomy. It's the essential core shapes behind every single feature of the face. Those are the things that make all the difference. I'm going to do a bit more blocking. So I'm going to go pure white now. And I'm finding all of these, actually stay zoomed out. I'm going to find all of these super wet spots to the face, the wettest spots of the face. If you don't know what they are and your hands are clean, just touch your face. What's oily and what's not oily? So my cheeks aren't oily. My forehead's a little oily, a lot oily. My nose is oily. My chin, eh. My lips are kind of dry. I should probably drink some water. And my eyes are kind of dry. And, you know, that you start to see, okay, the shiny, more slick the area, the more white you're going to use. I just completely exposed my dirty self to all of you guys. It's okay. It's all in the name of education. Um, and I'm just going to throw a big block of white just in the forehead area, almost like a U shape, just there. Reduce that opacity. Just a U shape right there for that shine in the forehead. And then I'm going to add the upper lip. So imagine a milk mustache, but it's with a blocking brush. Okay, but not all the way. It's not a complete milk mustache. You don't want to outline the lips, but it's the upper lip like an actual mustache. And I almost made a bad joke. And then those two little drooly bits. So your mouth is very hydrated all the time. That shows in the corners of your lips. So you want to add a little bit of that right here and here. That makes it look very natural. And then a little bit of a brush stroke just running across the mouth, catching some light. There's so many different ways to render lips. They're really up for grabs. As long as you have the central cylindrical values and the upper lip is slightly darker, it will look good. No one's paying attention to that area too much. Unless it's like a pinup or something trying to be sexy, then you really have to add that lip gloss and stuff. But for everything else that's not pinup or partial pinup, the eyes are really where it counts. And I'm just blending. Sometimes I don't blend my brushstroke in the certain highlights. See that kind of texture there? Because highlights bring out texture, and I don't want to take away that charm. I'm going to keep the center middle part of the lower eyelid the darkest. And then finally, I'm just going to fix, let me duplicate the layer. I'm just going to fix the focus in the pupils and the iris. So they're looking in different directions right now. I want them to look like they're looking directly at you. That is what's really sticking in the mind of your viewer. That's what sticks in the mind of your viewer when you have a portrait that isn't just eyes, but eyes that look like they're looking, they're seeing. And then an eye that looks like it's seeing is a focused eye. So you make them both look at the same thing. That level of realism just spiked because it's not just a drawing, it's a drawing that is alive. And the eyes are throughout all types of media, cartoons, anything. If you want to make something look alive or dead, you go for the eyes. So go for the eyes, okay, guys? I'm just trying to make sure these look focused. Doing 14-day challenge critiques is my favorite because it's definitely my element. I'm a portrait specialist, but seeing the different ways you guys draw portraits is really the fun part. It feels like we've seen this portrait before, but it really is unique in its own way. And I really, really love doing these 14-day challenges because I get to see all these different ways to draw the same genetics. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy. And I'm just making sure the eyebrows are the same size as well. And I'll show you guys the before and after. So my dear 14-day challenger, this is your next step. Find your version of this. Find your version of adding contrast. Find your version of elevating. Find the next step of your journey. Evolve to the next level in your evolution. Eventually you'll find a final form that is a combination of realism and style that just makes people's jaw drop. There's a way there. It's there in your future. It's there in your timeline. One day, when you're a little bit older, you're gonna have a style that has this beautiful combination of the two. and you will find it. But remember, you can't turn your back on realism fully, and you can't turn your back on stylization fully. There's just this little balancing act that you do to get there. All the best artists that are, household names, I guess we can say, have found a balance between style and realism. The 14-day challenge, portraits are a big part of art, and studying portraits this way really makes all the difference. Just the repetition. Between every submission of the 14-day challenge, you have to get a critique. Getting critiques is like the most amazing way to improve, because the person who critiqued you, the things they said, stick in your mind. You don't forget them. It's just how humans work. We're social creatures. When we get information from someone else, it's different than if we heard it from ourselves. And so like you next time you draw, their voice is there telling you, like, I know all of you hear my voice when you draw. So believe me, it really does work. Getting critiques from people who are less skilled than you still matters. They may have less skill, but they still have human eyes, and they know what looks off. They know what looks right. They might leave you a little breadcrumb to follow to find where that mistake is. Okay. And I'm just going to smudge away at the eyebrows just a little bit more. I don't want the eyebrows to look so unfinished. So I'm going to just sharpen the edge of the eyebrow out here, trying to make them look similar. Flipping the canvas will help a lot. And the longer you delay flipping the canvas, the more horrifying it will be that first time. But if you flip the canvas regularly, you're never going to be horrified. Okay? I'm not trying to make it perfectly symmetrical or anything. Alrighty, and then just one more thing, which is just that recession shadow. I do want to add it in ever so slightly. Actually, I like the way you did your downward eyelash. I don't know why mine went upward. I guess that's just muscle memory. I like the way you did yours, so I'm just going to keep it. So select all, and I'm going to get a new layer, and I'm just going to add that shadow. It's the beard shadow, but it's not quite fully developed. It's just a little bit of shadow for me to show you that the lower half of the face still needs that cylindrical presence, but I still want to keep it that signature soft look that you have in your work. It's so slight, but it goes a long way. I'm so sorry. I keep coughing. Okay. And then back to resolution talk. This right here, this unclean edge right here, you can clean it up or you can keep it. Again, it just depends on where on the spectrum you want to be between stylization and realism. How much resolution do you have? How much are you sacrificing of your style to have that resolution or the realism therein? And I'm just cleaning. Up this area. And then right after that, a quick little tip. This goes for traditional artists as well. You never really want to have a super sharp, razor sharp edge in your work. You want it a little bit blurry where you have flesh. So put your hands back on your face again and push down on your cheeks. These are very flabby, right? At least for me. And they have like a lot of, like stuff. So when you push down on something that feels like that, you don't paint that with a hard lasso edge. You get the blur tool, and you blur it, because not only is it soft, but it has hair on it that makes it even softer, especially for females. If you're drawing not just strictly females, just especially for softer characters, let's say. So yeah, don't forget that. So the cheek, so just and then chin, and all these areas are going to get blurred in a second. But before I do, I want to make one last recession shadow. So low opacity, and it just runs across the edge. It just hugs the edge. It's just making the chin look like it's turning inward. You see that? Really, really cool shadow. So minimal. Adds that last little percentage of volume. Okay, so cleaned that up, and then that's the before and after for that little section. And then merge down, and then of course I'm gonna get my blur tool. I don't know if my blur tool can do it for me. Oh yeah, it did it. It's just small enough resolution. So I'm just blurring the edge of the chin and the edge of the cheek. I want it blurred. It's not so much a lens blur. It's like a it's again, it's a texture blur, very different from a camera blur. You don't want to overdo it. You definitely don't want to use Gaussian filter, Gaussian blur, because that might be too much. It's just the blur tool if you're using anything equivalent to that in Photoshop or elsewhere. Okay, and then I just want to clean up the eyes a bit more, but I want to leave some of that painterliness happening there. It's a very cute look. You should also, unless you're going for that niche thing, you know, you gotta have a very particular gallery. You're not interested in painting burly old men or anything like that. That's fine. Subject matter is that's up to you. But always make sure that if for every 10 faces, cute faces that you draw one old man, draw one male, just so you're not strictly only good at one thing. Do you know what I'm saying? Drawing only cute faces, that'll catch up to you. One day you're going to need to draw a burly old dwarf or something, and that's the only freelance job you had that month. Look, what are you going to do? So make sure that you're ready for that day. You draw a male face, you draw a female that has more bone structure, that has smaller eyes, smaller pupils. Make sure you're not a one-trick pony. None of my students ever will be. I will not allow them to be. And you guys are my students, so I want to make sure you guys have that. If somebody ever needs you to paint that, and it's like a question of whether or not you can get groceries that month, study that male face and learn both ends. And usually when you study one, you automatically kind of know the other. So remember, keep pupils small, keep iris kind of like a low hanging look to the eyes, maybe a heavier brow, flatter brows, downturned eyes. And, you know, so many of the things you do is for the female face, you're just doing the opposite. Bigger nose, wider nose, all these different things. And I'm just cleaning up here, trying to see if there's anything else I missed. And then I'll do one last little critique for that one. I do want to do both of them, since both are really cool. Okay, so I'm gonna flatten the image and take you to, actually before I flatten the image, I'll flatten the image. Okay, we're gonna go to the before, after. So you did have a bit of a pink look to everything. So beautiful job on the textures, great work. This is the official day one, so it's not a day one work in progress, right? This is the official day one. So before, after, I wanted to show you a full render. I wanted to take it all the way to the finish line. You can choose where you want to stop. You don't have to stop here. You can stop at way earlier than I did. I just wanted to push it to the finish just so you guys can see this benefit of you can keep your style. You can keep it. It's yours. Enjoy it. People like style in galleries. I didn't change any of the features. All I did was just get a big bucket of realism and just pour it on top. It still has something there of yours in the end result. But there's this direction now with the realism that just feels a little bit more intact. There's a bit of rogue shadows hanging out here somewhere. I want to get rid of that. So yeah, do you guys have any questions at all? Oops. I guess I'll save that. That's fine. Buccal fat, yes. Mine are fluffy and need to shave. Hi, Isam. Thank you for catching. Thank you, P. I hope this helped you. And keep going with the 14-day challenge. What day did you land on so far? Uh, for the next day, do I do the same reference? You can start a whole new portrait. What you're supposed to reference is the process for the 14-day challenge. It's not forbidden. You shouldn't feel bad if you need reference for the 14-day challenge. There's nothing that says that you're going to reduce the amount of information you get because you introduced it. No, it doesn't work like that. You add a reference, you're getting more information. However, a reference can stop you from relying on your memory. Person who does 14-day challenge and graduates it has a reliable skill. You take that drawing they made, you rip it up, they can draw it again for you with their eyes closed. That's the beauty of the 14-day challenge. You learn how to have a reliable skill set. You can do it with any medium. So when you use too many references, you're not going to learn how to do that. Do you guys understand what I mean? Just day one, you got this, P. I believe you'll finish the 14 days. I truly do. Even if it takes you 6 months, keep at it because you have such amazing potential. Your eye for beauty, your eye for anatomy. You're not making any crazy anatomy mistakes right now. So you have an amazing foundation. You just need to learn the rules of sculpting and form. I have a whole channel for all of that. There's no reason why you can't learn any of that. So before, after, I added more contrast. I started with the contrast. I then continued into blocking and finding the larger blocks of the face. I then added some blocks for the highlights and then started blending with the largest areas to the smallest areas, widest areas to the tighter areas, and then continued into just sharpening edges and reducing brush size to complete detail. And I think that it added a lot while preserving a lot as well. You're gonna get your ass in gear. Okay, good. For this piece, what I really wanted to take a look at is I just wanted to talk about how your colors, just take a look at this slider. This color, this color, this color, this color, and these colors are all from completely different universes. You need to harmonize. You have to harmonize. Using a dead drop, like that's it, you just completely dropped into almost grayscale, and it's kind of a pukey dark green origin value hue. It's wrong. It's wrong to do that. Not because it's like you can do whatever you want, but because when you're trying to illustrate, you have to have some kind of environment value. You have to have some kind of cohesive environment. It helps the audience not get taken out of the movie. It helps it so that when the viewer is looking at your portrait, they don't feel a confusing message coming out. Is it, like, is it completely grayscale, or where's the blue coming from, and what exactly is causing this drop? If we see something like this in a movie, it's like the character got cursed suddenly, or like a sudden grayscale value drop in a movie is almost similar to like an atom bomb or some cool explosion in space. That grayscale that happens, in Star Wars when she turns the big boat around and shoots it at everything goes grayscale. It has impact. So be careful when doing it. This is supposed to be a glamour shot of this particular character. So all I did was wash everything with that blue. That's it. Now all these values have cooled down and are pulling from a very similar section in the color picker. And see how the slider doesn't go back down to warms at all? It's sticking to the cool side of the hue slider, which is what we want. We want an either warm or cold temperature in this scene. That's really all that it took. After that, I would say that you have some lighting issues. When you have glowing underwater bioluminescence, you need a little bit of that charm in there. So what I can do is either color dodge, or I think color dodge on softer values will really go a long way. And not everything, just like a mysterious light coming out of all of these. Just watched a reel on YouTube, and there was an artist who did this amazing tutorial, and she was like, mysterious light adds. That's such a good way of describing it. Mysterious light. I don't know her name. I should probably credit her. But yeah, that was a really, really great way of describing that magical element. And it just kind of, well, in this case, it's bioluminescence, but you know what I mean. And that same light, I'm letting it sit on top of the far half of her face, the far half of her arm. We need that overlapping connection. Okay, and then I'm just deleting. So it's just light presence and environmental temperature. That's it. Those are the two main changes today. I don't want to change too much because this is kind of at the end of the class, so I can't go in too much with this drawing. One thing that I would do if it was my drawing is allow most of the drawing to be taken over by that pink of the fish, because that base value is the blue. Yes, it's the temperature of the environment. But right now, the local primary are the fish. It's a complex thing. When you're trying to think about primary light source, is it primary because it's big to the canvas, or is it primary because it's big to the character? And so it's debatable. And I'm just adding all of this here. This hand, because it's in the way of those lights, it gets a little bit of an eclipsing happening. Really look up a reference for the hands. I know I shouldn't be talking with the hands that I draw, but I feel like it just looks a bit stiff. It doesn't feel like she's interacting with these fish naturally. It feels like a very stiff hand, like me after I've installed paver patio in my backyard. Oh, whoopsie. All right, so I'm just darkening. I don't want to overdo it, but just the tips of the fingers a little bit could use a bit of shadow. And then because we just darkened, we're going to add a bit more cool and blue to those fingertips. And you can even add that translucency that sits on fingertips and stuff like that. I'm going to flatten the image, and then I'm just going to go back to color dodge on that pink and just find some rim light. The rim light behind her doesn't make much sense. It's kind of like you lost her face, so you had to rely on something. And it kind of flattened the scene. So let me just add a bit of that rim light there on her back area. And a bit on her arm. You had some, but you were too shy with it. Go for it. This is the light environment you picked. It's there for the taking. And so this edge here, all that it's done is that it's just flattened the face. You've interrupted the environment, this magical environment where the fish are doing all the work, but you've kind of added a whole different other light source behind her. Well, that's not fair because the fish are over here with their beautiful color trying to establish this environment, but you just interrupted it for the sake of letting some definition come into the portrait. You didn't need to do that. You had an amazing edge happening on the face just from the fish alone. Give the secondary light source a chance to do the work. Do you see that? So let me delete that. You see how now we get to really see the face in this environment. That white stuff in the background was interrupting this flow of fish. And I just want to make sure I'm not screwing anything up. And I'm just gonna clean that up here. And I'm gonna end up going backward in the history just so I can retrieve some edges. But before I do, I want to just complete her face. And again, we just want to show how that edge there, that light from the fish is doing all the work. It is showing what we need to see. Beautiful job on the face though. Very, very nice work because it just looks like a really nice rotation. And I will go backward and try to retrieve some of that contrast for us. But yeah, the lashes here, the edge of the cheek. I'm just going to use my pencil brush. The edge of the cheek. All of that is getting illuminated by these fish that was not visible earlier when you had that big white splotch there. You established an environment. You picked glowing fish flying around underwater, swimming around underwater. Stick to it. That's a really cool concept to explore. It's just so magical. And if you're going to pick magical lighting, keep it. Don't abandon it. Don't abandon ship. It's not as complex as you think. It's just about letting the background be dark so that these objects can be light. Let me see if I can find a better way of darkening the upper part of the canvas. So this is a cool trick to establish space or distance space, is just to darken the upper half of the canvas quite a bit. You see that? And then I'm just going to delete it wherever the fish are. So we cooled down the environment. We let the fish just glow. We didn't add any other elements other than the fish themselves. This arm could use a bit of that Terminator value just around her or his. I'm not sure what this character is, but their muscles, and just throwing in some of those little indicators that there's multiple light sources happening at the same time. I'm going to reduce the levels just a little bit. Actually, that looked good. Let me do that. Reduce the levels just a bit for the back. Merge that down. Duplicate layer. Reduce the levels just a bit more, just to have that impact, the atmospheric presence. And then I'm going to let that pink kind of hover in from the corners of the canvas, and also deleting away. So we have a nice sharp separation between ambient light and non-ambient light, like just the whatever she is or they are. Okay, and then this leftover white stuff, I'm just going to make it part of the pink light, just to make it make sense. And then finally, I'm going to just spike up some of these areas. Wherever the fish is closest to the body, that's where we get a stronger rim light. So just there, around the hands, I'm going to duplicate the hands and kind of overglow the hands and delete in between the fingers, so we end up getting that almost X-ray look to the fingers. Do you see what I'm saying? And then delete what I don't need all around. It's just a pathetic attempt of mine at trying to get the fingers to be translucent. And then just everywhere else on the face, just trying to pull off the same look. Wherever the fish are closest, that's where we get those two worlds colliding. I could do more work on the face. I could try to bring in a lot more of that light on this character's portrait. I mean, it's not rim light anymore. It's just straight up light on the face. So it's a different light source. It's more than just rim light or ambience or soft brush just hovering. These are full-on light rays sitting on top of the face. So you would need to reblock thinking about where the fish are sitting near this character, where the light of the fish is sitting. And I feel like we've lost a little bit of definition around the hair here. So that's really what was missing, is kind of believing your own story about this dark realm, and letting it be dark, letting it look like it's an underground, underwater, deep underwater world. and letting the scene be just dark enough that the magic is just present enough. You can, this is something I love to do. I darken the whole scene all the way, and then I have two layers, one that's darkened, one that's not. And I start off by deleting away at the things that I feel like are part of the focal point. So I delete away at the whole half of the face that's in the light, and then I delete away at what's in the light for that primary white light. And so you end up with even more of a dramatic light presence, and you can even take that to some level down a little bit. Okay, so it doesn't feel like daylight in any way. I love darker themes in anything really. In any kind of media, darker themes are my thing. Yeah, just a little bit more for these magical fish. And it would be really cool if you showed us a little bit more, maybe an extra little jellyfish that has something of a blue glow. Let me show you what that would look like. Oh, it's too perfectly spaced apart. Just introducing one more color in the scene might go a long way, just so that you have extra elements moving around. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm just kind of blurring it in, and maybe using color dodge and reducing it, and then just putting a little guy in the middle somewhere, just like a jellyfish or something, or like a weird little fish. I don't have any more words. Just something extra to use on his character, so that you have a combination of like different elements happening at the same time. I really think the blue gives it something, that goes back to that blue that you had at the start of the painting. So let's take a look at the before and after. So before and after without the blue, just to respect your original color palette. So before, let me see how much more I can zoom in. Okay, yeah. Before you had a really cool palette, really cool, but it just looked a little bit flat when in those areas where you grayscaled. You could have used an off blue, you could have used something just to complete the world, but you don't have to take these suggestions. This is just about building illustrations that have more magic in them, and glowing skeleton fish underwater deep in the trenches of the depths of the sea, I think accounts for a lot of magic in an illustration. It's just such an easy thing you can grab at to add magic, having a glowing fish. And then after, feels more realistic. It feels like you added realism. There's definitely something to have in both of them. But this is how powerful soft light is. This is how powerful understanding the bloom of light, what light is as a texture. And then this is it with those extra blue elements added on top. So we can take a look at the before and after. Before, after. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate you guys hopping in today. If you guys want to support me, please head over to my Instagram. I would love for you guys to take a look at some of the reels I have there. They're shortened versions of my classes. To get to my Instagram and all my other links, go to istebrak.com and click on the link here for Instagram. Give me a follow. I reply to literally every DM that's sent to me. I love getting to know you guys. It means the world to me. You guys are my family. And I just feels like if I can recognize your face in the stream and I'm also chatting with you, it just adds that extra bit of family to everything. A lot of the people here I exchange daily memes with, so I'd love to get to know you guys. If you're going to be regulars, if you guys have posted any work on the subreddit, if I've critiqued you before, I'd love to meet you. I don't do Lightbox, but I do Instagram. Anyways, then if you want to get your work critiqued, you just have to go to the subreddit. So the subreddit is right here. That'll take you to my subreddit. This is where I picked up today's pieces to critique, from the 14-day challenge to the magical fish. This is where I got all of this stuff. Okay, so this was the first one, and this was the second one right here. This is where I picked stuff to critique. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys on Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Bye.